Hi guys, Josh from SoundTraxx here. Today we're going to upgrade a Blackstone Models K-27 from its original factory installed Tsunami decoder to a new Tsunami2 TSU1100 along with a CurrentKeeper. Alright, so refer to the documentation that came with the K-27 for separating the locomotive and tender with the drawbar connector. Once done, set the locomotive safely out of the way. We've got 4 screws in the bottom of the tender in the 4 corners that hold the tender tank on. Remove those, the tank comes off, and you can see the factory installed Tsunami decoder. It's got 4 screws holding this in. We'll remove those. And that gives us, with the original decoder removed, it gives us access to the pinout board and breakout board where we'll be separating the wiring harness and tying into the TSU1100. Alright, so we've got the decoder removed. This is the breakout board. We'll be removing each of the individual wires off of this to make our connections to the TSU1100. Before we do that, we're going to use this handy wiring chart provided by SoundTraxx for tagging these wires to make our installation go a lot smoother. Alright, so using the SoundTraxx supplied wiring chart, we've gone in and clipped all of our wires off of the breakout board that are needed for this upgrade. You'll see that there are 2 wires left going to the breakout board. These are for the opto sensor, which is essentially the chuff cam for the original Tsunami. These will not be needed, so we're just going to trim these off low and out of the way, and that's the end of the breakout board. So we've got our wires tagged on the tender. We're going to get our TSU 1100 ready for the installation. We don't need all of the length on these harnesses, and we don't need all of the output wires. Since this locomotive only has a headlight, we won't be using the backup light output or the FX3 and FX4 wires. So for those, we're just going to, the FX3 and FX4 wires, we're going to trim them back and just tape them back onto the decoder itself. We have our 2 purple speaker wires ready and accessible. We don't need to trim the length on those yet until we've got the decoder just about ready for installation. We will go ahead and trim our power harness and get our leads stripped and tinned up. Remember, for all of the soldering, you want to use electrical grade solder and flux. Plumber's flux contains acid that will inhibit the electrical connections and can damage components on the decoder. Alright, so we are going to use a CurrentKeeper on this installation. The CurrentKeeper on the TSU1100 ties into the ground wire, which is the green and yellow striped. That'll get the black wire of the CurrentKeeper. The blue wire on the CurrentKeeper ties into the function common. We've added a jumper to the function common so we can also tie in to the headlight positive. Make sure we have lighting. Don't forget your shrink tubing before making your solder connections. Nobody likes to have to go back and desolder because they forgot shrink tubing. Make our ground connection. And there's the CurrentKeeper and TSU 1100. Set the shrink tube. Alright, so we're getting the wiring harness on the tender itself prepared to add the TSU 1100. Just stripping and tinning the wires here, making sure to not knock our identification tags loose. Once you're done with getting the wires stripped and tinned, now's a great time to remove the factory installed speaker wires. We'll be using the wires that are with the TSU 1100 for this. Alright, so we've got all of our wires tinned. We've got shrink wrap prepared on all of our wires to cover our solder joints. We're ready to install this TSU 1100. I've gone ahead and added a 1K ohm resistor to the headlight negative side, the white lead. This is necessary to drop the 14 volts of power in the decoder to the 3.3 required for the LED headlight. Remove our tags as we go. I like starting out in the middle of the power harness and working my way to the outside. That way you're not getting tangled up in your previously done work. So you'll see here we do have two of our track pickup wires tied together. Both the locomotive and tender are picking up power from both rails. So in this instance, this is our truck wire on the tender picking up the left rail. This is the wire coming back from the locomotive picking up the left rail. They'll join together and then tie into the black wire of the TSU 1100. So our right rail connection to the decoder is going to be just like that left rail with the locomotive and tender picking up both rails. We've got our right rail pickup from the locomotive coming back to the tender, right rail pickup on the tender joining together to the right rail wire on the decoder. Alright, the last bit of soldering we need to do to complete this installation will be the speaker wires to the speaker. The Blackstone K-27 is already equipped with a speaker that will handle 1 watt of power and provide us our 8 ohm impedance. The TSU 1100 will fit that range perfectly. So the nice thing with the Blackstone tender picking up power from both rails, we can go and test the installation without the locomotive being attached. We did test the installation. CV1 at an address of 3 is what the decoder is defaulted to. We had control of the sound effects. We can obviously test the motor control without the locomotive and let the CurrentKeeper get a charge on it. We removed the tender frame from the track, removed the power, and the CurrentKeeper kept the decoder powered up for about 15 seconds. We will now go ahead and close up the tender shell, get everything tucked nice and neat up inside, and complete this installation. So So the K-27 tender tank inside has a great little recess up inside the coal load. The TSU 1100 fits perfectly in there with some double-sided tape behind it. The CurrentKeeper is going to rest across the top of the speaker to complete this installation. So here it is, guys. Blackstone K-27 buttoned up with a Tsunami2 TSU 1100 decoder and CurrentKeeper installed. It is a tight fit in the tender, but it does all fit. Again, using the documents provided with the locomotive, we reassembled the locomotive and tender using the drawbar connector, and this locomotive is now ready for many years of service on your railroad. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or need assistance during this upgrade, please don't hesitate to contact our customer support department. We're here for you.